The speaking is happening without a speaker. And perhaps you can see that your listening can also be without a listener, without anyone actively listening, making some kind of focus, making some kind of effort to understand. Because if there is a listener, then whatever is being pointed out here cannot reach itself. It will be filtered out by the listener. The listener is nothing but borders made of past experiences. So as long as the listener is listening, it will filter out anything that is really new, anything that can really awaken, anything that can really transform. Because the very function of the listener is to protect itself by keeping its past knowledge intact. But if you see that listening already happens by itself, just like the speaking happens by itself. There is no really need for any listener that will actively listen. A listener is there only if there is a desire to achieve something through this, to use this as an information, to make use of this. Because that's what the listener, the speaker, the thinker, our sense of I wants. It wants to make use of anything that it sees outside. It looks at the world as a function and it wants to make use of it for its own benefit out of its own understanding of what benefit is, which is again keeping itself caged in its own image, in its own knowledge, in its own ideas, in its own interpretations. So if there is no desire now to understand anything, to reach any particular state, to experience any particular experience, then there is no need for any listener. Listening just takes place. There is no need to control this experience, to gain something from it. You can just be like this space in this room. It doesn't make any effort to receive all the objects, all the movement. It is just resting in itself and everything is contained in it. And in the same way, listening happens by itself. And understanding, not that understanding of the mind, but a direct understanding, this transmission, is directly understood without mind creating concepts around it. Because what we are sharing here is not information. It is not knowledge. It is nothing that can give you any benefit in life. You cannot make use of this because it is just pointing to what you are. If any listener appears, just simply notice that without any need to do anything about it. Because any desire to do anything about it is already coming from the listener itself, that is reacting to itself. But there is no clarity about what is this listener, what is this focusing mind, which constantly creates itself through some variation. Some kind of center is created, and it is this center that is perceiving this moment. And it is already perceiving this moment through its own past knowledge, through its own interpretations. It is not pure, it is not clear, it is not allowing that reality which we are to be seen, to be experienced. Mind creates this illusion that there is something here which is existing in time and space. And so it is constantly measuring itself, in this relation? What is it according to time and space, according to what it was in another point of time and space? But what if this moment is all there is? What if we are this moment itself? This presence which is conscious now is all there is, and there is no reference. There never was any reference. It is always this conscious presence only. Can mind be at peace with that? That it can never grasp this, it can never understand it through any past knowledge, it can never define it, it cannot even describe it. Can mind be at peace with that and not interfere? Because truly, this moment is not in time. Time is created only when mind enters with its interpretation. It only already looks at this moment as an object out of many moments. It looks like this album of many, many pictures that is gathered through its past experiences, and this moment also becomes a picture which is compared to all those past pictures. But this is not what is here. So this game of the mind, it is necessary to expose it, to see it very clearly. Some kind of comparison takes place between one object, which we think to be ourselves, and another object, which could be ourselves in past, ourselves in future, or anything else. This phenomenon of thinking ourselves as an object will continue to take place. The only thing that can be done about it is to bring clarity, to bring light onto this. Because this is not exposed. It is just a thought. This thought is appearing now in this infinite, timeless presence. It is not pointing to us. It is pointing to its own images. Mind is pointing to itself. When it imagines ourselves as something, it doesn't point to this reality, it doesn't point to our reality. It is pointing to its own images, it is pointing to its own creation. Only it doesn't see it this way. And that's what makes our life collapse into a story, a dream, a constant reaction. But when clarity is there, when mind sees, when mind starts to see that this is what takes place, that it is actually entering its own library of images, its own story, its own concepts, its own interpretations, this very seeing collapses the strength of this, the weight of this, the momentum of this. It is simply dissolving into silence. This mysterious fact of perception itself, of just being conscious, is simply not seen. It is not being valued. If you notice, you see that when we look through the mind, we see only mind is asking itself, what is it conscious of? What is it conscious of? This object or that object or this function. It is interested in the object itself, but the very fact of being conscious is ignored. It is taken for granted. It is simply not seen. Because mind doesn't care about being conscious, it cares about something to make use of. But what about this very experience that each one of you is having right now, just being conscious? Before you even know anything, you are already conscious, you're simply aware. Before any object is there, you are aware. First of all, you are aware that there is, even before you know what is, there is. You are. Can you just give attention to this very fact of being conscious? Can you let your attention rest on awareness itself and not on any object here? If you do this, you will see how all the structures of the mind at this moment when you do this is actually collapsing. There is nothing to say, nothing to describe, nothing to translate, nothing to interpret. Because this consciousness is so much here, but it is not an object. You cannot find it as an object. You cannot describe it. You cannot capture it in any way, because this is your essence. This is the very beat of existence, which is here. And so when attention is starting to recognize this mysterious happening of just being conscious, all these mind concepts, all mind's interpretation at this moment are actually gone. See how the mind creates this illusion that it is behind everything. How neurotically it wants to be the owner of this life. It wants to be the owner of this movement. Even the owner of this consciousness, it pretends to be, because it says, I'm conscious. When you wake up in the morning, instantly the mind enters and says, I'm conscious as this I, as this person, as this body. It owns this. It tries to own this consciousness itself, this awareness itself, which is prior to it, prior to any concept, any idea, any image that appears. Because how would you know anything, any concept, any idea, any image, any object if you were not aware already, if you were not conscious already? Nothing can be known. And yet, mind, which is just a bunch of concepts, tries to own. It creates this illusion that it actually owns this consciousness, this awareness itself. Just like with breath. If you are asked if you're breathing, you say, yes, I'm breathing. But actually you are not breathing, breath is happening on its own. So mind is constantly creating this illusion that it is behind. There is this I that breathes, that is conscious, and then it is doing things, it is deciding things. So all our life is built by this interpretation, which is never being exposed truly, investigated. What is this? Who is this I that creates this illusion that it owns all of this? Where is this I? Have we ever actually seen this I truly, apart from thought? Can mind be courageous enough to look now and see that it is no more than this thought? It is just a thought. This revelation is available all the time. Because if you truly listen right now without any listener, without any focus, you will see that existence is taking place. You simply exist, you are simply aware. There is no controller. You are not doing anything to be. It is inherently free. It is inherently itself. It is inherently free of any definition, any description. But somehow it is like there is a focus. Mind is focusing on its own ideas instead of allowing this to be recognized. There is a focus. It is like mind is already looking for what it knows here. It is afraid to see what it cannot know. It is afraid to be part of what it cannot understand, what it cannot define. So it is actively looking for already the known, whatever it has gathered. It is only looking to this. It is like looking for a match, basically. So whatever doesn't match, it doesn't see it. So that's why we experience this feeling that everything is already boring, known, and we want to have new experiences all the time, because mind is basically looking for match. Whatever it already keeps in its library of images, it looks for a match. And this whatever simply is here cannot be seen through this filter, naturally, because this cannot fit. This is just too much. It cannot fit any description.
I feel that my mind is always creating the same experience, not me. It doesn't matter where I am, I can do something new, I can be here instead of the regular environment, but I still feel that something is creating the same.
Mind is already looking for what it has already, the base of knowledge it already has, the ideas it already has. It looks for a match. That is why when it hears something which doesn't match, there is a resistance there. Because this is how it actually reassures its own existence, through finding this constant match, reconfirming itself, reaffirming itself.
It doesn't even hear something which is not what it's looking for.
Yes, it doesn't. It doesn't hear this reality, it doesn't see, it doesn't perceive it, because this reality cannot be understood in a linear way. It cannot fit any concept. It is just what is. It is isness. It is the conscious isness which knows itself. This is what is here, this is what everywhere is, this is what all is. This is what each one of us is experiencing all the time, just conscious presence. But we are somehow unable to simply recognize this as it is. Mind is entering and interpreting this. So this moment of interpretation, this what is being added by the mind, this has to be seen. This very seeing will free the mind from its own prison. Because by seeing itself as this interpreter, as this narrator, it actually dissolves into silence just by the seeing. By seeing itself as what it is, by seeing itself as a thought process, basically.
If it doesn't dissolve into silence, does it mean it's not fully seen?
You see, when this is seen at this moment, it is silent. But this silence immediately is triggering this protective mechanism of the mind. Because in this silence, it finds a threat to itself.
Mm-hmm.
It finds that it is not there. And this brings it back, of course, to reconfirm itself. And this can happen in an instant.
Yeah.
So by constantly looking at itself and exposing itself as this thought process, which it is, it will learn to trust eventually. And those moments which were very brief, they will become longer. And then this window of just being here, just being, without mind adding anything to it, will start to be seen. Because mind will not so quickly reconfirm itself through another image. So we are not registering basically those moments. We are even without making this investigation, in life we many times experience those moments of just pure awe, just beauty, or silence. In those moments we don't have any interpretation. We are really, truly free and happy. But we don't register them as they are because immediately mind takes ownership of them. Then we say, oh, I was so happy, or when we see the sunset, it's just, there is nothing to say. We are the sunset at this moment. When we see this beautiful sunset, we are this sunset, we are this beauty. But then mind says, oh, how beautiful this sunset is, and immediately it is owned as a picture in this album of mind, and it reassures itself as the owner of this picture. So we don't even register those moments. We do have them all the time. We experience them, but we don't register them because we haven't learned to value this. Again, we are filtering reality through this center. So those beautiful moments of basically experiencing our freedom, our nature, our essence, are not registered. Because somehow we are much more concerned about being functional in society, being functional as human beings, as this person. And this doesn't fit. These pure moments, they don't fit.
Should they be registered?
Register, when I say register, I mean they have to be
Acknowledged.
Yes, as what they are. Yes. Without being owned to some kind of function. For example, when you say, this is such a beautiful sunset, you already own this as a social function. You can tell about it, you can tell yourself about it, you can have this. So it's already fitting some kind of function. It is no longer itself, it loses its purity, it loses its freedom. So it is not acknowledged as it is already transfigured. Because truly, this existence, what we are all the time, is immense beauty and joy. But mind cannot register this because it is bigger than its world of values. Even the greatest importance of mind, the greatest meaning of mind, whatever mind can create, the meaning of meanings, cannot even touch the intensity, the beauty of this pure conscious presence. Because this is truly godliness. And when mind says God, it is relative to being not God, to being something mundane. It is all on this linear relativity scale, you see, and reality is just immense. It's immensity, it's beauty, it's a mystery. So can mind be silent about this immensity and just let it recognize itself now, not interfere? That is the only question. Can it have trust not to enter with its own ideas, with its own concepts, into this infinite now? You see, the moment you create yourself as something, the moment you define yourself, you're already caught. Because this definition is already relative to infinite other definitions. There is already tension between this definition of being someone, being something, and whatever it is related to. So there is already tension, inherent tension in it. So this peace, which is truly what we are, is already far away whenever we don't expose that we have actually just defined ourselves through just a thought, basically. We don't see that a thought is happening. Thought becomes a reality, and reality is ignored. That is the constant situation when mind is not seeing itself. Thinking becomes reality, and thinking is always just a reaction to past knowledge, past experience. It is never able to define, grasp, touch this immense reality, immense mystery of existence. So can the mind see this, that when it thinks, can it be clear about it, that it thinks? Not that it sees reality, but that it already thinks reality. Can it see that? Can we be clear enough about this, that it is actually exposed, that thinking is not what is. Thinking is just thinking. Can this process become clear? Can we lit it up as it happens? When thinking is not exposed as thinking, then the next stage is emotions. Emotions color this interpretation. And then it's even harder to see. That's the constant chain of events. Next chain of events is another interpretation and another emotion, and that's how we basically get lost. So can we follow this chain backwards? And as it happens, as the thought appears, as the interpretation appears, as any context appears, can it be seen as what it truly is, just a thought? You will find out that if mind will start to see itself doing this, if it will start to be clear about its own thought processes, at some point you will see that it will not even come to the emotional stage. There will not be any emotion. It will be dissolved before. Everything will be clear. See, mind, when it looks what it thinks of this moment, when it looks as if on this moment, it is not able to grasp this moment because this moment has no cause. This presence, conscious presence, it has no cause. It is simply itself. And mind is a mechanism which has to have a cause and effect. It has to see this chain. It simply cannot grasp reality as itself. It can only grasp processes. Something which has a cause, something has a reason, a beginning and an end. That's why this, which has no beginning nor end, nor cause, mind cannot see. And at some point, fear has been brought up as a response to this. So whenever mind even approaches this pure presence, it starts to protect itself. And when it wants to protect itself, it is covering it up by something which it can know, define. And then that's all there is, this definition, this idea. And the chain of response begins. So can the mind be courageous enough, sincere enough, trusting enough to allow this immensity which takes place, which it cannot understand, to be left alone, not to cover it by anything of its own? It definitely can. The only question is it ready to? Is it really ready to? Or does it still want to play the game of its own imagery?
When there is no person, there is no It's I'm trying to see it clear. What is it? What is it that is awake here and not here, and not anywhere else? Like, what is the separation here? That one mind is awakened and one mind is
There
not?
is no, but you see, but mind cannot grasp that which has no reason, no cause. You see, you're already asking a question out of this formula that inherent in it is the perception that anything has a cause and that the form holds the essence. You see, mind cannot see form as just form. It already attaches essence inside. So when you look at this form, you say, oh, you are inside this form and I am inside this form. How come you are this and I am that? You see, all
So
this
what is it?
is already created.
What is it which is bonded? What is bond?
Can you look at your own experience?
I can't find what it is. I can see tendencies. I can see that attention is going, and there is מתוך. There is something that comments on everything. There is something that tries to control. There is something I can see. I can see that. What I want to see is what is it that
Who is
needs
seeing?
to-
Who is seeing all of this? Can the one who looks on all of these phenomena can see itself? Can you see that seeing happens without a seer, and that the seer is just a thought, which is added, which is trying to own the seeing? Let's go to the simple reality of the senses. The senses are operating freely now. Yes, there is sight happening, there is touch happening. Yes, there is smelling happening. Can you see that it really happens without your aid?
Yeah.
The senses are not personal in any way.
Yeah.
They're just happening. Sight is not personal. And then again, look and see that there is some kind of feeling that it is your sight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? But
So
upon
come.
investigation, you can see sight is not yours. Sight, everyone has sight. It is the same sight. It is not personal. Seeing is happening to everyone. The same seeing. So this functioning of the senses is the same. And yet, there is a kind of voice, kind of a feeling that it is your seeing, it is personal seeing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So now can you investigate this feeling of having this personal seeing? Who is claiming this ownership of seeing? It is the same one that is claiming everything. What is the nature of this one that as if owns all of these experiences? What is it made of? Where is it located, you see? What is it made of? What is the nature of this? Can it be courageous enough to see that it is only a point of view? It is only a thought. It is not here, truly. There is nobody here. A thought is happening in this here now. There is no one owning the thought. There is no one owning those senses. There is no one owning this speech and this listening. Just like this, there is nobody owning this space. It is simply itself. It is simply takes place. It is appearing in this knowingness, in this consciousness.
this moment I feel this point of view is very dense.
Now you're describing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is already a describer. You see? It is shifting, it is changing heads.
Is it?
Yes, because there is already the one who looks upon this. But it doesn't look upon itself, because when it looks upon itself, truly what it finds out is that it is empty, it is just a thought. It dissolves in the very seeing. But the question is, can it truly see itself now, without trying to reach anything? You see, you are now looking with a reason. That's why you cannot see it.
Mm.
Because you already have a motivation to see, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
The mind has a motivation. It is not pure seeing, because you want to see in order to experience something. For example, you want to experience.
Go beyond it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So mind has already created out of this speech an image of what is beyond it, and now it wants to reach it.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, of course, it cannot see because it doesn't want to see itself. It wants to see in order to experience. See the trap?
Mm-hmm.
So
How
that's
do I see without?
Yes, so this is the constant thing. There is always some kind of motivation which is already, there is somebody that has a motivation to do something, to inquire, to look, to meditate. But what is just seeing without a motivation? Can the mind be so mature that it just wants to be clear about its own essence without any motive, not to escape suffering, not to reach nirvana, just to see itself, what it is? Can it be truly a real investigator of its own essence, just to be clear, just to have clarity about itself, not to reach anything, without a promise, without any promise, without any motive to reach any elevated state, to escape some suffering state and so forth, just to be clear about its own essence as it happens, you see. This is why usually it is spoken about equanimity, because it is only when we are equal about life, so mind is basically relaxed, it is not interested, it has no strong motives. Of course, some motives remain, but it doesn't have strong motives. Therefore, it can be just clear about itself. It can just inquire into its own nature, and it no longer plays any games with itself.
What do you mean some motive remains?
Contextual motives. There are no strong motives. It can be more or less clear. It can look clearly at life and at itself. It is no longer driven by constant motives. Fear, of course, is the strongest one.
The fear?
Yes, fear.
To
Fear.
be without fear.
Fear is a motive. Fear is, I need to avoid, I need to... Yes. So it looks at life through fear, then it cannot look at itself naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So if we inquire, we see that there is always some kind of very subtle games. Even if there are no gross games, there are more subtle games like this one. Like you say, I want to see it now, but I cannot see it because truly you don't want to see it. You want to see it in order to achieve something. You want to see in order to experience something. It is not the seeing by itself. And that is what is necessary here. Mind looking at itself in complete clarity. Meeting itself in complete clarity. Seeing its own essence as thought in complete silence. In equanimity. Fearlessly. That is truly what is necessary. Why should mind fear that which is its source, that which it surrenders itself each night to, without any promise? Why should it be afraid of that which it doesn't know? Why should it be neurotic all the time about creating, seeing its future, planning itself? Why not have trust, and through this trust expose itself, expose its own games, be clear about its own little games, its own little motives, its own fears. There is only this trust that is necessary, truly.
Trust in what?
Trusting that which the mind cannot understand, grasp. Yes? Trusting this. If there is trust, then even if this fear rises, mind will see that it is okay. It is okay. There is no need to respond to that so strongly, to create a drama about it. It will learn to be quiet. It will learn to be transparent. So when there is trust, then you can make this step. Mind can make this step into this unknown territory, and then there is a revelation because it can see that there is really no threat there. It can see that its own fears are simply irrational. It is just a mechanism, basically. So there is nothing really threatening there. Slowly, this reality can shine, and mind can start to be part of this and not recreate itself in this imagery, in this little map of itself. Then it can truly take real joy of this beautiful existence. It can be part of this infinite mystery.
So this joy in infinite mystery is actually very different from what the eye experiences as emotions of joy.
It has almost no relation to it.
Mm-hmm.
It is like entirely different dimension. But somehow, because mind is so afraid of this, it can never, just when it approaches, it is struck back, pushes itself back. Because it wants to find something familiar. You see how the mind is working. You see, mind has to learn its own mechanisms. It's always looking for something familiar, and if it doesn't find it, it interprets this as a threat and moves away.
It's working on its own survival.
Yes, exactly. Just a survival mechanism, basically, which has its own place in how we evolve, but now it no longer serves. So it just has to be clear about its own functions now and have a little trust in order to be part of a greater reality of itself. It already served through its functions. It doesn't need to recreate itself now in this way. Mind is constantly animating itself, animating its functions as if it was a person, as if it was a structure, as if it was a center. So this is the unnecessary part. It doesn't need to do that. It is just a thought. There is no person, there is no entity, there is no center. Its functions are okay, but there is no need to create itself as a center in order to function.
And all the information or karma or whatever the center is now made of, are they expected to be dissolved instantly?
No, usually it is not dissolved instantly. It is a process.
But in the beginning, when you don't really live this understanding, then who prevents it to be gathered again before it dissolves?
If your mind will be willing to look upon itself constantly, look upon itself as it functions, as it thinks, as it creates this interpretation of what you call reality, if it opens its eyes to the fact that it is an interpretation, it is a concept, it is not really in touch with reality, it is afraid of it, you see. If it can be clear about it, it is actually afraid of reality. That's why it only looks at its own interpretations. Then this very seeing will dissolve it. And with its dissolution, slowly, all those branches of this tree that were connected to this whole perception will slowly be dissolved. It will be dissolved at its own pace. Eventually it will be dissolved on the brain level. There will be no traces left of this perception, of this experience of separation. But it all happens at its own pace. As long as there is this clarity, this light is coming in, this light will light everything up. All will be lit up. So
it's quite a mystery to me how I, for one hand, I feel like I'm suffering and it's unbearable, and on the other hand, I keep on clinging to the suffering at any cost.
because again, there is an identity of a sufferer, and this identity is still appealing to the mind. It is still appealing to it to be the sufferer. It still feels safe being the sufferer.
But there is something so fed up from this suffering.
Not enough fed up. When it will be fed up, then it will be ready to dissolve its identity. Then there will be fire of inquiry that will burn this away. But for now, if you don't feel this, it means that this identity of being the sufferer is still appealing to the mind. It still wants to be the sufferer, it still feels safe in this identity, in playing this game with itself.
It's not just a habit.
When he will be fed up with this, then there will be energy, intensity, to inquire into this very core of who is this sufferer. Then mind will be willing to see, to light it up, to clearly see who is the sufferer. Truly, who is the sufferer now? Now, if you don't remember anything about yourself, if you don't touch your knowledge, you touch your past memories, who is the sufferer? Show me, where is the sufferer now? Without thinking yourself, you cannot be the sufferer.
Like we're maintaining it.
Hmm?
It's like we're
Yes, we are maintaining this. Yes.
So both the suffering and the source of the suffering is the same thing?
The source of the suffering is the image of you as the sufferer. It is this image that looks at what is here through this filter and interprets this as suffering. It matches.
So you're saying that there's nothing that creates my suffering, only myself.
Yes.
It's not the reality which is cruel and...
Again, this is your interpretation, you see. This is already the interpretation of this image of you that is looking at this reality as the reality of cruelty, as the reality of that causes you suffering, of someone being responsible, someone to blame. But you see, this is not being identified, this is not being recognized. Mind looks upon it and thinks it looks upon reality, that this is what truly it finds here. It doesn't see that it already interprets it in its own image.
I hear you say that it's there or it's not there. There's nothing really to do. Let's say it's the fire, as you call it, is to really see is there or is not there.
When there is something to do, it means, like we spoke with before, there is some motive there. I want to do in order to, so it's already a game happening. But when this fire is pure, you find yourself in the seeing. Mind is no longer happening in the darkness. it is suddenly seeing itself doing all of this. You can see it now. If you want to, you see, that's the beauty. Nothing is preventing this. The only thing that can prevent, if you have another motive, then you don't want to look there. Then you will look elsewhere and this will continue. But if there is this fire, then just see it. It is here.
And if you find yourself going in the drama or in the play,
somehow you want to be defined by it. That's why there is no looking there. But if there is no desire to be anyone, if you see that being anything, any definition, holding on to anything as you is suffering, if this is revealed, then you will no longer want to play those games. As long as we think that suffering is caused by anything, then mind has this illusion, yeah, I can solve it somehow. I just need to gather more information, more experience and so forth, better circumstances and so forth. But when there is this clarity, whenever I'm something, doesn't matter, even a happy something, it doesn't matter. Then this clarity that I'm already caged. I'm already condensed, I'm already limited. When this clarity comes, then there is no longer this motive to be anything, to play games. And then whenever you are falling out of habit into the games, and you will fall in quotes, then it will be easier to see, because you don't want to hide from yourself anything anymore. When any role is revealed as suffering, then there is no longer desire to play any role, and then this seeing can happen intensely. Seeing this player, this role, this I. And as this seeing happens, it will be dissolving into silence. Then only this will be left, only what is here. Suddenly you will find yourself more and more in this simple space of presence, simple space of conscious presence, without any need to add anything to it, without any need to define yourself, to describe yourself.
I feel that the first big experience I had, like that I saw nothing was real, it's like I'm not ready not to want. I saw that maybe doesn't matter, but it's like I still wanted to want.
Yes.
The experience of wanting.
Yes.
And I feel it's still strong. This what is calling is wanting. No, I want this energy is very loud. I want to say it takes a lot of room.
What does it? Can you inquire? What is the motive behind it? Who are you while you want? Because you see, there is somebody, some identity that is being reassured through this wanting. It is not just the wanting. It is the wanter, the one who wants.
Okay.
Who is this one who wants? Who are you trying to protect by keeping the wanting? Can you be clear about it? Can mind see its own idea of itself? Why it so much holds on to the wanting? Why? Can you see the definition you have about yourself through wanting? Because it is only definition. And this clarity will release it slowly. If you face this definition directly, not through, but directly, then it will be dissolved by this very seeing. Can you see it? How do you define yourself? How the mind defines itself through wanting? This presence, this reality is a mystery. It is whatever mind is saying about it, it is not true. It can be part of it only when it is silent, when it is transparent, when it no longer adds anything. So whatever it sings, whatever it describes, whatever it's afraid of, it doesn't apply to this, it applies to its own ideas. That's why we need this clarity to see this. When mind sees this, that it is actually caught up in its own ideas, then it is ready to jump into this, to dare, to have this courage, to have this trust. Because it realizes truly it doesn't know. It is sincere enough to see this, that truly it doesn't know what is real here. It is running away from this all the time, but it is running away because it is already reacting to its own programs, that it is threatening, that it is meaningless and so forth. But truly it doesn't know. So can it be so simple, so sincere as to admit, I don't know. I really don't know anything. I don't know what is here. I don't know what am I. So can I just let it be and show itself? Can I not add anything? Can I not cover it by my own interpretations and let it reveal itself, you see? That's the beauty. That's where can the mind do that? Find this trust, find this courage.
Are we actually able to do all this by ourselves, or do we need to be surrounded with...
Who else is there?
No, for example, Jeff believed that we need to be in a school for the support of other people.
The only thing that is necessary is sincerity and this fire of inquiry. That is all. If you don't have this, then it will not help, and nothing will help. If you have this, then everything will help. You can just walk and see a tree, and this tree awakens you. Suddenly you see how your mind looks at a tree and already captures it in its own images, in its own ideas, and suddenly you realize that the tree is not these ideas, the tree is not these concepts. It is something that you don't know, and you can just remain there with this mystery which you, a moment ago, you thought you know as a tree, and suddenly this tree is a reflection of the self. And everything suddenly begins to awaken you. And if you don't have this fire, if there is no sincerity, if the mind has other motives, it wants to keep playing games, then you can be in satsang, you can be whatever you are, and you will still look at it from these motives.
But it's okay.
Yeah. It's okay, it just needs to be exposed. It just needs to be seen. Everything in its right place, anyhow.
It was this fire of dissolving, seeing, and I had a lot of judgment when suddenly this strong inner movement stopped. Life became very flat, very there's no asperity, there is nothing really to grab. And still there is this judgment that I'm not doing what needs to be done.
Yes.
Because suddenly I left like an orphan without that fire that was guiding me.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no...
It is still guiding you.
I know, because I can sometimes I remember.
Yes.
Sometimes I say it's okay as it is. And I see it, but there is no stability.
But this one that judges, can you look upon it? Look upon this one. You see, you already create yourself as the judger.
Yeah.
And this judger is the one that blocks this fire from being seen. It is there, it is all there is. But this
Stop it
identity,
immediately.
you are now identified with this idea. Can this be exposed? Can mind see this game now? Is this presence that you are right now has anything to do with your past experiences? Can you see
It's
that
made
it
of
is...
familiar sensations. I would say mostly it's bodily sensation.
Is this what you are? Or is it just an image of you that is made of those sensations and this past knowledge and these past experiences? Can we bring clarity now in this experience that you're having right this very moment, that you are simply conscious right now, present? Can you see that this presence, this conscious presence, has nothing whatsoever to do with anything you keep in your memory? Not even the image, the idea of the fire you had. It's only an image now. It is not the fire that is here. It is just a concept, just an interpretation. If you can embrace this presence as it is, seeing it has nothing to do with any knowledge, any memory, then suddenly you will see this fire is here. See the beauty of this. There is no need to rely on any past. You are. There is nothing more to it. This is all there is. You don't need to rely on anything to be. See, you are a living, breathing mystery that is consciously present now. It has nothing to do with anything mind keeps in its memory. It is just a bunch of images. They have nothing to do with what is simply here, unconditionally present, unconditionally conscious. This is the fire of truth. Living this from moment to moment.
I feel I'm trapped every second. There are arising those bodily sensations, and I am that.
You see, the bodily sensations are okay, but I am that is the interpretation.
I know.
Yes. Just see it as it happens. Every time mind adds this interpretation, I am this, just let it be seen. There is nothing wrong with bodily sensations. It is perfectly fine. But can mind remain quiet about it? Can it see that when it says I am that, it's already interpreting, it's already thinking. It is just thinking. It is not what is here. So can you trust what is here and not the thinking? That's the real question. Can you live moment by moment what is here and not the thinking?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're not sure. Good. Now you just look and see. Is it possible?
I do not embrace I'm not sure. I don't know.
You are still relying on what you think without noticing. That's the only thing that's blocking you. So can you embrace just this pure presence of yourself without knowing whose this self is? You are present undeniably. It is undeniable that you are. The only thing that begins to be relative is your interpretation of this.
I know. I can feel it coming.
Yes. So can you recognize this interpretation as what it truly is? Just a thought, just an interpretation, and not trust this one, not rely on this one. By seeing it clearly, you will not need to rely on that. You can trust this very bare presence, undefined presence, but undeniable too. See the beauty of this. This presence is undeniable, but doesn't need to be defined. When it is defined, it's already relative. So all possible reactions are there. But this presence, which we are, is undeniable. It is simply itself. It's unconditional. Can we trust this and not what the mind says it is? Not how the mind looks upon it. Not how it thinks about it. So two things are necessary. Mind has to see itself thinking. First, it has to recognize that it thinks when it thinks. And there must be trust in this presence, in what is and not in the thinking. So if there is no identification, if there is no clarity of the mind itself, that it thinks, then naturally we cannot trust not thinking because we don't even register that we are thinking. So first of all, mind has to learn to investigate, to expose itself as the thinker, as thinking process. As it thinks, it has to be aware of itself thinking, just that. And then trusting what is here and not the object of thought.
But it goes so fast.
So don't worry about time. This feeling that it is too fast, it's only because the mind is not habitual at looking at itself. It is too much looking outside of itself. The moment it will start to inquire into its own nature, time will stretch for you. It is able to see it You have this capacity. Mind has this capacity
I saw that.
to see itself.
I mean,
Yes.
it's something
Something I want to tell you. If you can leave all your past, you are too much holding to your past experiences, and you're trying to generate meaning from them. There is no meaning in your past experiences. You don't need that meaning which your mind tries to derive from it.
It's like every description you give, I've been through it, I grab it instantly.
Because you try to define the meaning of
I try
yourself
to recreate
through this
it.
past. Your meaning is here now. Don't try to bring meaning through past. There is no meaning there. It is dead, it is gone. It is not even what you think it is. It will be very helpful to you to trust this moment, to trust your presence, your bare presence, your simple, pure, conscious presence, and not rely on your any past knowledge, past experiences. Because those experiences were very powerful, you are holding on to them very strongly. But your presence is much more powerful. Trust it. There is wisdom here, present now. It is much more powerful than anything you remember, any idea you have.